Hey everyone, welcome to Meat Machine Talks. I am Dean, and the person on that side of the screen is someone who you might recognise. You may have recognised him from my YouTube. Yeah, it's not the people on the wall, it's the gentleman sat there. But you may also recognise this jacket as well. I know Alex will remember this jacket very well. Yeah, I am honoured to have today someone who I've, he's probably going to say, oh, don't be stupid, but someone who I've genuinely looked up to in the gaming industry, someone who I have fair knowledge of. We've shared one or two battles over a console over the years, nearly 30 years in fact, but we haven't spent long enough each other, so we thought we'd do a digital chat. So Alex, also known as Big Boy Barry, welcome to Meat Machine Talks. How are you today?
I am a red-hot, tip-top, non-stop, one-stop shop roller coaster rider fan is how I am, Dean. Happy to be here!
Do you know what? I'm so happy. I'm so happy you said that because I was hoping you were going to do that intro.
Oh, there you go. You got the Meat Machine special.
There we go. There we go. An exclusive. I need a button I can hit where it just comes up.
I wish I had one of those. Do you know what? I never got an Eliminator jacket.
Really?
Never got it. Never got an Eliminator jacket.
Oh, come on. We've got to sort that out.
I know. So you've got a gamesworld collectible that I don't.
Oh dear, exclusive there. Do you know what? I actually went through my mind about making similar type replicas of this. So if I do, first one off the production line, Big Boy Barry. There we go.
And you get a giant size one, then hit me up.
Exactly. Well, to be fair, I'm not exactly slimmer of the year, so I think we're both sharing a issue.
Yeah. Sized video game TV show clothing.
You know those horrible Giacomo adverts. With me and maybe me and you can do one of those. So, but in case anyone was wondering, the last time we met was there. It was Play Expo 2019. And I don't know. That was back in the days when people could go out and things. Yes. Look at the lack of social distancing going on there.
I know. That freaks me out. Look at it. I start watching like TV programs and like old movies whenever there's like a big crowd, and it just puts me on edge now. And I'm like, what the hell? What the hell are they doing? They're in a restaurant together. They're talking to. Where's your mask? Yeah, exactly. It puts me on edge now. It's just it's hard to remember a time before all of this, right?
Yeah, I took myself down a weird rabbit hole of watching really old WrestleManias. Well, I say really old, like 10, 15 years ago. And you see these massive auditoriums just packed with people, and then you sort of go,
weird.
This seems so odd.
Absolutely, completely, absolutely.
But
I'm a WWE fan as well, and so when the whole pandemic hit and they had the first pay-per-view and there's nobody watching, I can't watch it. I mean, I can't watch it without an auditorium. And now it feels weird when you go back and watch them with a crowd of people. It's odd. It's an odd time we're living in.
It's very true. But do you know what? The one thing that I think has shone through, and I've kind of said this to a few people, is that it just shows you how inventive and innovative we've become because of things like fast internet. I mean, the fact that we're even doing this call is still a miracle in my eyes. I still don't quite get how it works, but anyway, I'll look over that. But yeah, if we didn't have the internet and gaming and, podcasts and stuff like that, I think if this pandemic had hit, like, even 5 years ago, it would be a very, very different world.
You're right, even 5 years ago. But, growing up, I mean, imagine if this had happened in, like, the 90's, right, when no one's got laptops or internet and you can't do the homeschooling. You would have had generations of kids that would have missed a whole year of school and can't get hold of anybody, can't see anybody. So I think, technology is undoubtedly a lifeline in times like this. It means we can all still work and live, and it's the new normal. It's very different, but you're absolutely right. Even 5 years ago, I think it would have been a very different story.
Totally agree. And if it happened in the 90's, we wouldn't have had gamesworld. What a tragedy that would have been.
Hiatus for so long. No online gaming back then.
Yeah,
because it was live night on a Thursday with Andy Collins and Jeremy Dawson.
That's it. It's what
that never worked.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. But we'll come into that. So, looping back, if people don't know who you are, what I normally ask my guests to do is to give a quick 30-second introduction about who you are, what you do, and I will pass the floor over to you.
Okay, so I'm best known as Big Boy Barry. My real name's Alex, of course, but I'm best known as Big Boy Barry. I appeared, I think, on episode 2 of Gamesmaster, winning a golden joystick. I was asked back by the same production company if I would be interested in a role in a new spin-off show called Gamesworld. Rest is history. So I grew up doing Gamesworld back when video game TV was a thing for Sky One. And Big Boy Barry has become an intricate part of me. There's no difference really now between the Big Boy and Alex. So I did Big Boy Barry for many years. We launched our own spin-off sitcom with that, with David Williams. That ran for a couple of years. Show went off the air, came back on in a morning slot, doing co-commentary with Andy Collins. And then I kind of segued into some more TV work. I did a nightly show on the Computer Channel, which was another Hewland International production. I did some work for CITV, Mad for It, and a show called Tiggs. And then I found my way into PR, into video game PR. So that was around the year 2000, 2001. And so I've held various PR positions throughout the years. And that's kind of my day job now. So I still very much keep a hand in performing, but my day job is that of a PR director. Currently working for a company called Heaven Media, which is lots of fun. So yeah, that's me. That was longer than 30 seconds.
That's all right. That's fine. That was more than enough information. So yeah. So you're I mean, obviously, what you did with your kind of your experience of being in gaming and TV, I guess that translated over to PR as well. Is your PR? Is it your own PR company? Is still around the business industry around the gaming industry?
I got sort of back and forth, and you're absolutely right. So I came to sort of a crossroads around the year 2000. So Gamesworld wasn't coming back. I was still getting other work. As I say, I was doing some stuff on CITV, and then I was doing some acting roles, some corporate roles, some personal appearances. But I had started doing a couple of days PR without even knowing what the hell PR was. An old friend of mine from a company called Joytech. Joytech was an ancient accessories company, UK accessories company, owned by 2K Games, which in itself is sort of bizarre. That's another story into itself. Anyway, I always used to go down and film for Gamesworld at ECTS and all the British trade shows that no longer exist in the video game world. Joytech would always be there, and I got a good relationship with those guys. We started featuring them on the show, and I got a call from their CEO to say, do you want to come do some PR for us a couple of days a week? I had no idea what PR even was, and I told him that. I said, "You've got the wrong guy," and he said, "No, we love the big boy. We love the big boy. It's going to be great. You're going to be fantastic." So I started doing a couple of days PR, and then, as I say, around the year 2000, I kind of had a segue. They liked what I was doing for the company, so they offered me more work or a full-time position if I wanted it. And so, you're at a crossroads, and you think, "Gee, okay, I love gaming. I'm always going to be a gamer. I want to do something in the video game industry. Do we go off and go all on TV, or do you go all on the PR?" There wasn't room for there to be quite such an equal amount at that stage, because, as I say, they wanted me to go and do some more days for Joytech. So that's when I got into PR, and many of those skills indeed were transferable. So I worked for a company called Mad Cats back in the day, helped launch Rock Band 3 and Rock Band 4. They did all the instruments there. And that was cool. So they had a head office in San Diego. So I spent half my year in San Diego, half my year in London. And then in 2016, I left to set up my own PR agency, which was called Big Boy PR. That segued into a larger company called Little Big PR, where we grew very, very quickly and became the largest video game consultancy, I think, in Europe. And last year, we sold that company to Heaven Media, which are great friends of ours. And they're a very big gaming marketing agency that have got offices all around the world, but they weren't so strong on PR. So they were looking for a turnkey solution, as we say in the industry, for PR. So they bought our agency, and all the staff came on in, and all the clients came on in. And now I sit within Heaven Media as a PR director, directing the global PR for them. Happy days.
That's amazing. I mean, just hearing that story, I think, how can I put this? I guess looking back, I'll kind of come into the Games World story shortly, but I guess following your career, there can always be that weird, I guess, tension of not knowing what the future is going to be. Because I've worked for a variety of different companies myself, not necessarily gaming. And when you join in a role, you never quite know whether you're going to stay there, and there's always that itch to go and do your own thing, right? And obviously that comes with its own risks. You know, money being being a valuable one. Having a normal job is you know, nice to have money coming in every month. But if you're working for yourself, obviously it's almost double the work, right? So the fact that you took that,
I'd say more than double your work.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, it's, you know, it is a full-time thing, and it's really interesting having done both, and indeed switched back. You know, so I ran my own business from 2016 to 2019. Until 2019, and now I'm back within Heaven Media, so I'm still running that department, but it's not my business, and it's very interesting doing both because there are pros and cons. It's amazing going out and doing your own thing. It's also amazing, you know, having other people worry about headaches of accounting and finance and HR and God only knows what else. So yeah, you know, there are pros and cons to both, definitely.
And tax.
And tax.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no doubt about it. You know, running your own thing is fantastic. If anybody watching this is thinking about going and starting their own business, do it, because you'd regret it if you don't, because you'd never know. You know, just be aware that there's a shit ton of work involved.
Exactly. Well, I mean, again, it's one of those things. It's calculated risk, and I think you knew yourself, your skills, your talent, what you were good at, and you know, if you've already got those connections in your sector and who you're integrating with, I think doing that transition kind of makes sense, right? Because as soon as you say, "Hey, I've got my own thing," you know, people are like, "I know that guy. He's reliable. Let's go and work with him." So,
and I never needed my national record of achievement, which I think you showed on your Twitter. I had one of those, the Burgundy files, right? I don't know where it is. I mean, I never used it. I never opened it. It's like, it's for absolute nothing. It's crazy.
So for those who don't know, in the UK, I don't know if they still do it. I hope they don't. But during
they do it
the 90's, maybe early 2000s, possibly, there was a stage where schools were rolling out these folders, and what you would do is you would fill out a introduction statement, and you would keep all of your documents of all your you know, things that you've accomplished, whether it be your GCSEs, which are exams that we take in the UK, or your degree at university, or anything you've done at college. And it was meant to be your portfolio of your whole educational path, until I went to my first ever job interview and kind of stood there and went, haha, look at this. I have this wonderful burgundy folder with all of my things inside. And he kind of went, yeah, what, mate, what experience you got? And I went, oh, this wasn't the plan. This isn't what I understood what was going to happen.
That in the folder.
And it was like, but look how good this certificate looks. You know, look how well that watermark has been pressed onto the paper. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? So yeah, I suddenly realised that thing was a complete bollocks. So yes, it's been sat at the bottom of a cupboard for a very long time, and I pulled it out, and it was, do you know what? It was weird going through memory lane. I'll come on to why, because it was kind of going through like the years, and it was like, you know, school into college into university, and then everything else I've kind of done in between. So it was a weird nostalgic journey of going through my schooling and education, which comes onto a good point, because when I was on Gamesworld, I was still at school, primary school, when I got given this jacket. And I mean,
you haven't changed the bit, Dean.
A little bit. I mean, the hair's starting to recede a little bit, and I seem to have grown facial hair. But I guess height ratio between you and me is probably still the same. So I haven't grown very much. I didn't spend long enough on Millsy Island. That was a problem.
Yeah. He would have stretched you if you stayed around for a little while.
Exactly. So I remember. For those who don't know, me and Alex were on Gamesworld, which was a flagship show on Sky One. I used to watch it religiously, and then I got given the chance to actually be on the show, which, even till this day, I still have the odd weird flashback in my mind where I go, I was actually on that show, wasn't I? And the reason why I say that is I've got a few YouTube videos of like the episodes where I was on, and there's still people who go, I remember you being on this. And it's only until then it kind of hits you going, God, this is weird. People actually remember me and actually watched that show when I was on.
People remember. Yeah. It really is. Yeah, it really is. But, you know, you tend to remember the interesting contestants, certainly, for whatever reason, be it their gameplay skills, be it their humour or lack of, or their physical appearance, which was often very funny next to the videators. So there are a few really memorable contestants. You were one of them.
Oh well, that's good. I'm sure there's a reason why, which we'll touch on in a bit. But I I distinctly remember. Do you remember the location of where it was? Because I seem to have vague memories of it being some old Sarson's vinegar brewery. Is that correct?
It was, yeah. Was that, I don't know if it was a Sarson's brewery, but I think it was next to there.
Other vinegar providers available.
I can't. You know what? I can't even remember myself. I want to say it was near like Battersea Power Station, or it was in the city somewhere. It was deep, like around that industrial kind of area of London. It's a blurb, certainly a blurb between season 2 and season 3 of Beat the Elite, because they'd always send cars. Of course, we were very lucky, and they'd film in the winter, and it was often freezing. So you just get in a car and they'd drive you there, and that was that. But it was cold when we were filming that. I remember it was really boiling under the lights and then really cold everywhere else. So it was. I think it was a disused factory. Yeah. That's right.
I remember it well, and I remember. I don't know why I remember these things. It's like I seem to absorb weird information, but I remember it being freezing cold, and I'll tell you why. Because I remember. My mum was like, "Oh, it's cold outside. You're going to have to wear something warm." As mothers do. So there I turn up in I can't even remember what I was wearing. It must have been some form of a jumper. God knows what was on it. Probably either Mario or Turtles. Take your pick. And I remember going into kind of the prep and dress up area and stuff, and like all these people doing stuff in my face, and they went, "Actually, you're fine as you are." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And then they were like, "Oh, you're going to need to wear a t-shirt," and I was like, "Oh." So it was like, here's a black t-shirt for you to wear and a black baseball cap reversed. I was like, all right, fine. And I remember the parts where they're like, right, we're going to explain how it all works and this, that, and the other. And there was parts where you had to talk to the screen, which even watching back now was so cringeworthy. If you haven't seen them, there will be links for that in the description. They are horrific. And I remember having to go outside and practicing them with either a member of the studio or my parents, and it being something like -3, -4 outside. And as I'm speaking, I can see my breath. And it's like you're shivering, and then you sort of like get bundled into a room. And you're like, oh, it's warm. Oh no, it's really hot. Like it's crazy hot in here. So yeah, it was horrible having that.
People would get sick because it was. I don't think they'd allow it now. I think health and safety has actually changed considerably, certainly when it comes to having kids involved and a live studio audience. But yeah, I do remember one week distinctly turning up. It was like old school 80s British fairy tale cold, where there were like icicles everywhere and the toilet like froze up, the pipes froze up. And I think the electricity wasn't working when people got there, and the crew were just, ice blocks. And people would get sick because, you spoke of yourself wearing a T-shirt. Well, a lot of the videators, for instance, I would come out in a T-shirt and I got these flimsy pantaloon pants on or parachute pants on, right? And so you're absolutely freezing. And of course, they get you down ready to go onto stage and you're backstage, but you're there for a couple of hours at least while everything is being done. But you've got to be there on standby. And it was really freezing. So you'd go from those extreme temperatures where you'd go from the waiting areas. And then when you're under the lights, it's pretty warm. And then people would get sick all the time because you're just going back and forth between extreme cold and extreme heat. And it wasn't a pleasant place to be, I don't think. It was fun, but it wasn't pleasant when it comes to filming in the winter. Don't think they'll allow it now.
It is true, because it's weird when it's that old expression of when you see something on the TV, obviously there's camera trickery, angles, this, that, and the other. And then when you experience something whilst you're there, I mean, I always thought, maybe because I was small, I didn't know that the actual area where you were filming was huge. And I remember sort of turning up going, this is not as big as the studio as I was expecting. And then obviously you had the stairs that went upstairs. I mean, I remember it quite well. You had the stairs that go upstairs, and then all the consoles were laid out, and then you kind of had another room, and then the studio kind of like where they were recording everything was in the background. And I remember all this vividly. I could draw it all out on a piece of paper. And it's funny because when you watch it on TV, you don't necessarily see all those places because, it's like, when you come on, you have to run down and do this turn, and they kind of crop out the first part, and then you just see people run in. You never see the rest of every inch of the space being used to get kind of people crammed in. But yeah, I mean, it was still an amazing experience.
The TV, and it was actually quite a technical show to do, the Beat the Elites. Yeah, certainly because you're in a real world location than season 2 and season 3. Season 1 was much easier. Season 1 was done at the Sky Centre in Osterley, proper studio. It was all controlled. It was much easier, but it just looked terrible. I mean, it was just awful. Season 2 and season 3 were those real world locations. And it's pretty tough because, I mean, you know, the only thing that could have made it harder was bringing animals onto the set, right? You're dealing with children. You're dealing with video games that would go wrong all the time and weren't designed to be run. Certainly back in those days, you know, you didn't have HDMI cables and stuff. So, you know, all the hardware as well, you know, wasn't on the stage. It was all being run from elsewhere. So you'd have miles and miles of cabling for the controllers as well. And the controllers would genuinely break down all the time for both the videators and the contestants. So, you know, they had to keep stopping filming. The videators had to be on and had to deliver their lines properly. The contestants needed to be on form. Bob needed not to fluff up. And then there is the audience as well, which, as you say, they have to stop filming to make sure that the end result looks so busy. You'd have to move the audience around subtly in between shots. So it's actually a pretty technical show to do. And they tried to, I think we did three episodes a day because you'd shoot the two the eliminator shows and then the Beat the Elite on the same day. So doing 3 of these per day with all of those technical challenges, not an easy show to make, that one. No, my credit goes to the crew that did a fantastic job.
Absolutely, and I remember seeing some of that cabling because I remember the first time stepping up to the I don't know what you call it, the gaming area, and sort of looking down, going, "Hang about, there's no console there. Where's all this running to?" And then you sort of visually trace all the cabling going up behind into the middle of somewhere, and you're just going, "What is going on here?" But yes, El Gato didn't exist then.
And for some reason, you know, some games worked with that setup, and some games didn't. Didn't like the controllers being run that far. You know, there were genuine problems all the time, right? And again, you're back in the day where you're dealing with PAL and NTSC, which don't really have now. Yeah. Some games were being run on imported hardware, so they have to switch to broadcast standards. It would, every game there would be something, you know, there really would. And sometimes some contestants figured that out as well. And if they were losing, they would cry foul that their controller's not working. Yeah. They could get away with doing that when actually everything was okay. So it could be a minefield to try to keep things fair, to try to make sure everything was above board, and just to keep the tech running was a pretty tough job.
It's funny you mention it, and I don't want to make this too controversial, but I remember when the incident, which I'm going to come to in a minute, happened, and I actually, believe it or not, I found a YouTube video that actually, how can I put this in a politely way, stated incorrect information about what actually happened at that point. So I'll give you my view, and I'll see if it'll tie up with yours. So for those who don't know, there was a section where I was on stage with Bob Mills. We were talking. I think you were just beating me, actually, if I remember rightly. And
I just laid a meeting.
Yeah, it's all right. It's fine. We won't bring that up. But yes, Alex had just laid to waste me, which I can safely say because now I've got my revenge, so that's fine. But the Violet Blade, who was played by Rick at the time, then stormed the stage with a baseball bat. And by the way, I had no idea this was going to happen, right? So I was just standing there like, oh, okay. Very angry man comes out from the back wielding a baseball bat. I'm like, what? And obviously, I had respected you as a person, you know, like watching you over the years. So to see an angry man storm the stage with a baseball bat and suddenly whisk off a person that I respect, I had no idea what was going on. So, like, Bob had kind of pulled me in really tight. And it wasn't like, oh, you know, I'm just going to pull you into protect. It was like a proper pull. And if you look at it and look at the footage, and I just had no idea what was going on.
Traumatizing you.
And I'm just looking for my parents going, what the F is going on? And I just couldn't hold my emotions. So I just broke down crying because I was like, is this real? Is it not? What the hell's going on? And the first thing I remember is you running back on stage, like, you know, talking to me and stuff. And I remember Bob said something, and I'm not going to say it because it was probably non-PG. He wasn't too happy, but which is understandable. But I remember you came back on. I think one of the other guys came on stage and stuff and was talking to me and stuff. And then I remember my mum coming on. And the thing is like some of the videos that have been going around about that have said like, oh, my parents ran off. They went straight into the studio. They started complaining and this, that, and the other. And I said, none of that happened. Like, I'm not that kind of person, you know. Like, why am I going to complain that happened? So, yeah, that's what happened. But the thing is you guys cut it so cleverly well. And I think we must have recorded it about 4 times, because every so often you hear me go every so often from crying, which is hilarious looking back on. But yeah, I mean, it just shows the testament of yourself, though, because you knew exactly what had happened. And I remember you coming, sprinting out the back, storming the stage, and just like, right, out of the way, let's have a chat. And I remember that really well. And I guess from me to you, thank you for doing that, even though a 9-year-old couldn't verbalise those words because he had no idea of what was going on. But yeah, I mean, I was still quite shook up by that. And it was like, yeah, and now you've got to play this game. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I'm here to play games, aren't I? That's this is going to be interesting. So it was weird because I've got this. People have seen me do this on stream where I put myself in this weird Zen state, and I managed to just push everything out. And I think it was actually Gamesworld that made me do that, because you've obviously got the the crowd, and you can hear Bob and everyone else screaming at the freaking commentary desk and stuff like that. And somehow I can just focus everything in. Everything goes perfectly silent. And I did, and I nearly managed to get the, was it Sniper's Alley? I think it was called. Where you had to shoot all the videators when they popped up and stuff. And I nearly pulled it off, but I remember just everything going deathly quiet. And I was like, I've got one shot at this. I've got to try and make this count. And it was almost like, I've got to do it for Barry. He's come up. I've got to do it for him. And it was weird, because I think one of your faces came up. I was like, I've got to shoot Barry. I don't want to do it. Oh, never mind.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Never do that.
Which is why...
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. There really is. But I say again, you never get away with that today, right?
No,
you just
100%.
You couldn't play with kids' emotions like that.
No.
But because of the way that Beat the Elite was shot, so yeah, I remember that incident, and we were trying something. It was near the end of the series, and we were trying something where there was going to be this multi-story arc that went across for the week. So
Sure.
Violet Blade came and dragged off Big Boy Barry, and then that would continue on to Live Night, and that would continue on to the Barry's Joypad show or whatever, where I was on there. So it was trying to get you to watch all 5 nights of the show to see what was happening. But when we shot Beat the Elite, you never really had a chance to rehearse, because that's the interesting thing, because the day is so packed, there was never a rehearsal time. So there's never really a time where it was, me, Bob, and the videator, and you get to rehearse the lines. We had brief lines written for us, or brief scenarios written for us, and you just go on and do it. And that's why actually the day could take so long, because a lot of the videators couldn't remember their lines or just fluff the performance or whatever. But to spring that on you, or indeed any kid, without knowing or giving them fair warning, you just never get away with it today. And nor should you. I mean, that was quite horrific. But I do remember, I don't remember the day as vividly as you, of course, Dean, because it happened to you. For me, it was another day at Gamesworld, right? But I do remember that afterwards there was quite a solemn sort of atmosphere amongst the crew, where they all realised, okay, holy shit, we've messed this one up. We've gone too far. Yeah, I remember there was nobody reveling in the fact that we made you cry. Yeah. And I didn't know it was going to be that traumatic for you. So me running on, I vaguely remember running on to comfort you, bud. But seems to be the right thing to do, right? Yeah. It's just a decent thing to do.
But those memories stay with me. There's a few memories actually I remember from games.
And the Zen thing as well. Just cutting you off, just very quick. But the Zen thing as well is another interesting thing, right? Because and I guess you get this with competitive gaming. We were doing esports before there was such a thing as esports, right? We were doing competitive gaming before then. And I suppose there's the same thing when you're at a tournament today. I think if you're at home playing online, it's a very different experience emotionally, physically, mentally, to when you're playing in front of a live audience. And it's not just a pressure thing, it's a level of distraction as well. And this was interesting during the tenure of Gamesworld, certainly during the first season of Gamesworld, where they'd hire great gamers, really good gamers from a good gaming background, who completely fell apart when it came to being on TV, because it's a very different mindset, and it's about trying to block out what's going on around you, the pressure, the crowds, the lights, the you can hear the commentary as well. If you're playing a fighting game and you're losing, then it's hard to get out of that cycle and get back to concentrating, right? It's easy to go into panic mode very quickly. So it would require a mental discipline. And in fact, if you look at some of the best videators on the show, people like Mr. Mathers, for instance, who was a dear friend of mine, Martin, you know, he came on the show as a contestant season 1, videator season 2. First couple that he played, he lost. He just couldn't hold it together. And it's about finding that zen, as you call it, and bringing himself back. And then once he got into the rhythm of it, he was unstoppable.
Yeah, I it's funny because in the back of my mind, I mean, there was 3 videators I wanted to face, and I faced all 3 of them, yourself being one, because I was like, well, if I'm going to test myself, I need to test myself benchmark against the best, right? So, you know, iron sharpens iron, as I always say. But I remember Mathers being one that I was like, I don't want to face him because he's so ruthless in every way. Every time I saw him step on the stage, it was that presence thing, right? And I was just like, oh, if I faced against him, I think I'm going to have a bit of a problem. But fortunately, that didn't happen, so we're fine. And you're the only person who beat me. But I got my revenge. It happened.
Martin's a better player than I am, though. He really is. He's very, very good. And we grew up together, me and Mr. Mathers.
That's cool.
To school together. Yeah. I suggested him for a videator role and gave some pointers. So I was very happy for him to come on. So we'd often travel back up and to the studios together because he lives so close to me. So yeah.
I must admit,
we're still good friends today. He works for Nintendo.
Very cool. I must have to reach out to him at some point. But yeah, one of the funniest memories I ever had was, you know, if you went up the stairs, there was this big I guess open area where you had all the consoles lined up and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I can't remember the chap's name, but it was Raggedy, the game's MC, amazing name. And he at Street Fighter
took years to develop that character.
I bet. But watching him play Street Fighter 2,
the console cowboy, years to develop those personalities.
Watching him play Street Fighter 2 was like a maniac. And I remember going, yeah, I'm relatively competent at this, I'll step up. We played 12 times. I took 1 round off him. 1. It was like watching a psychopath go at it. And the thing is he was so laid back. He would literally sit back in the chair like that with his pad, and I'm like near enough in front of the TV, like, for God's sake, man, just give me something. And he's just laid back, and and all you see is like the screen flash, and you're dead. And I was like, yeah, all right, cool, yeah. And he was like, no, come on, I'll keep teaching you. And that was the really cool thing. Is the thing about Gamesworld is people saw it as a me versus them thing, right? But really, being there, it was like a big family, really. So, like,
it was a party.
You would go upstairs, everyone would be talking to each other, this, that, and the other. And I remember something happened, and I don't know if it's going to get you into trouble, but it will be my opinion of what happened. I remember on the grand final, I walked upstairs and my dad kind of looked at me and he gave me this weird look, and I was like, what's the matter? And he was like, well, I don't know what's happening, but they're talking about betting in the studio office. And I went, really? And he went, yeah, they're all betting that you're going to win it. And at that point I went, oh shit. You know, talk about adding pressure onto a 9-year-old. I'm going, shit, people putting money on it, you know. Which made me laugh because I thought, Christ, and I could hear like it all kicking off in the background and saying, and I'm going, oh Christ, okay, this is getting a bit weird. But as I said, it's one of those memories that will just live on. And you know, I know I've said it before, but to meet people like yourself who I think just champion what it means to be gaming, you know, you have that culture, that friendly nature, you know, you want to help people. And it's funny because over the years, and I think I said that in the video that I made, the quite comical one of when we played again, which is, you know, people would always say to me, oh, you know, you must be so pissed off that Barry beat you in this AR. And as I've matured in the age, I said, yeah, but do you know what? It actually taught me a lot, which is that, you know, sometimes you think you're the best, and when you step up against that, it makes you think, you know, sometimes you need to go back and refine yourself and be who you are. And I think probably going through your career as you've been, you know, you've kind of taken your TV expertise and have translated that into something that's completely propelled you into something else. And I think that's, again, testament to yourself of what you've managed to achieve. And I guess from me to you, I thank you for being that kind of inspirational person to kind of remind me of being, you know, keep trying is basically the thing until you finally get there, which I did after 27 years. But, you know, you got to carry on, to just try and keep going to where you need to get to. I've got some.
It's a special time. It was a special time, and there's never been anything quite like it since. It's highly debatable whether it would even work. Probably not, when we're so used to, typing in Twitch and watching people play all day, every day. That didn't exist back in the early 90s. It simply didn't. So, seeing people play against each other, physically in a studio with a TV budget behind it was pretty thrilling, and there was a party nature. And I don't think it was ever contestants against videators.
Yeah.
I think towards the latter years of Games World, they would try to keep the videators separated from the contestants because they clocked on that the contestants were clocking on who they were getting, so they wanted to try to keep it a bit elusive. But certainly afterwards, everybody would just hang out together and play video games. And it was also quite a nice. A lot of the games that we featured on the show were early ROMs. So you'd have like Super Nintendo and Mega Drive and Neo Geo, and you'd have those ROM carts, and they would be like that tall because there would be a motherboard, and it was the first time a lot of us got to see, games that weren't coming out for a couple of months, right? Because we were filming that far in advance. And again, there was no internet in these days. And there was no other way of seeing video games moving, right? So there were no previews, there were no trailers, and to get to play the latest games was always kind of thrilling. So yeah, I loved the Beat the Elite days, and that's a very nice story. Thank you very much.
Do you know what? It went through my mind when you said that, and you said, would it still work? And immediately, the first thing that came into my head was the Evo tournaments, where, that started from. You can't quite compare it, but it's almost comparable to Games World, where that started in like a very small place with a couple of TVs, and now obviously pre-COVID, massive auditoriums with people like that. I would love to have a WrestleMania of gaming, but with like people like yourself and myself of like old Games World and maybe even gamesmaster and stuff like that, and have a massive like the O2 arena of gaming where it's just the history of gaming coming together like that would be.
I think that would work, and I think if you did it as a WWE, unashamedly sports entertainment,
exactly.
Where maybe you don't and that is really what Games World was. You'd rig the results, but you'd rig the personalities, and you'd rig the games that everybody was playing. And I think that to me, and this is purely, but I'm sure there's going to be thousands of people watching this who vehemently disagree with me, but I think that what is missing from competitive gaming largely is personality. Now, I'm a man in my 40s now, so I'm not a kid. I don't get what the youth get. So, but my kids watch streamers all day long, and I genuinely, this is an old cliche, but I genuinely don't understand why they love watching the certain streamers that they love watching, because they're great at games, and I guess that's the appeal, but the personality is missing, right? And even when you watch, the serious tournaments and the DreamHacks and the Evo, a lot of personality is missing, and the players that you remember are the ones that have got a bit of an edge to it. And interesting you say that about Evo. I've attended a few Evos in my time working for Mad Cats as we did the Street Fighter sticks, and so there's a bunch of videos of me interviewing Omahura-san and a lot of the gamers that would work for Mad Cats, and just watching that grow from as you say, a couple of TVs set up in a conference suite, and then they hold the final at the MGM Grand now. It's just, it's incredible. But to try to meld the world of gaming with the world of WWE, or a little bit more of showmanship, I think that hasn't been attempted since Games World, and that's still a fun concept to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I've bounced the idea off a few people, and they've all turned around and gone, this is something missing. And I would love to be able to pull off some sort of crazy reunion of whether it be you and me, or the Games World crew, or some wider kind of historical gaming thing, and do a complete, as you said, wrestling entertainment styled event where people just cram in and it's just madly over the top, pyro, fireworks, God knows what else, full entrances. That I think would be absolutely amazing as a spectacle.
I think so too. It's just to make it look great, you've probably got to throw some money at it, and then I think are you going to get it back with the audience?
True.
Very possibly, possibly. But I still speak to a lot of the Games World guys, and nobody from the cast to the crew, who I still speak with, but nobody has ever said, "No, I would hate to do that again." Right? Everybody loved it. It was the biggest party. Games World was just so much more fun. In fact, I think demonstrably more so than Gamesmaster, which was always a little bit of a higher sheen, a little bit more. Thought it was a little bit more prestigious, but it wasn't as much fun to work on, I don't think, as Games World. Games World was always a little more rough and ready.
So, Vince McMahon, if you're watching this and you wish to fund our idea, there we go. Get in. There we go. We'll take an NXT takeover and we'll just slap a big Games World sticker over the top of it. There you go.
But you can do some really interesting things these days because of the fact that you could go out live, and then you could have live betting on. Do you think the not with money changing hands, but is the videator going to win? Is the contestant going to win? You have that sort of X factor thing where you can get the audience to participate either via an app or whatever it might be. So you can get a lot more audience participation in. You can play people from across the world. There's lots of different things you can do. So,
and possibly
somebody like Xavier Woods.
Yes.
He's a buddy actually. He's a really good guy. And I know him quite well. And he's got a wonderful YouTube channel and brings a lot of personality to gaming. And I'm all for it. I still think there's so much of that missing. I really do.
There we go. I'd say maybe he's the man who can unlock the key. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. And the other thing is, I was lucky enough to appear with Mr. Biffo on the Digitizer show. Was that last year or 2 years ago? I think now.
Yeah.
And it was mayhem. That day was mayhem. I was there with Larry Bundy Jr. and the Top Hat Gaming Man, and it was a crazy rough and ready day. And I really didn't think it was going to even be translatable to television once they cut it up. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. When it aired, it really was so much fun. As I say, rough and ready, but you can see the love there, and there was comedy there, and just treating gaming with a little bit of reverence, comedy, humor, personality. That's definitely missing as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. And if you win the aforementioned tournament, possibly you'll get a golden joystick, which I believe you have there.
Look at this.
Watch this. There is.
Surviving. Can you see that there?
We can. Look how beautiful that is. Oh,
there you go. Look at that. They had a couple of different joysticks, I think, that they used in the day. Different models. This is the Quick Shot 2.
I was just about to say, someone at Quick Shot asked for their joystick back.
There you go. Still love it. Survived with me all this time. So that's what.
And we also have a bit of BBB heritage sat there as well, don't we?
I stole many props during my time. Whatever I could get away with.
Permanent loan, you mean? Permanent loan.
Yeah, permanent loan. So if anybody's out there and knows Barry's Joypad or BTV, this would be my internet device called the BarryNet, which I would use to talk to the review team or features team or whatever. It was the day before cell phones, so there you go. And that was lovingly put together by the props crew, and I nicked it, and I can't bear to part with it. It's my BarryNet.
I love that. I absolutely love it. You see, the thing is, seeing little things like that just brings back so many memories. Because as I said, I've been watching your journey for 20 plus years now, if not longer. So seeing stuff like that is brilliant that you've still got it. I absolutely adore that. So you mentioned
I've got a load of scripts and stuff as well. Oh, really? Yeah. So some of them are just completely intelligible now because back in the day. So when we were doing the Barry's Joypad, we'd do or BTV, we'd do 20 episodes a year, 24 episodes a year. So the production schedule was brutal, right? So my whole life was Big Boy Barry back in those days because to film the sitcom elements would be 2-3 days maybe, and then you've got maybe a day out of the studio where you're doing the feature for that week's show, and then you might have another day or 2 days where you're doing Beat the Elite around that, and then you've got to get into the edit suite to do voiceover stuff. So you don't realize it, but there was a heck of a schedule there, and the scripts would come through for the next week's show every 3 or 4 days. And there was no internet back then, so they'd fax everything through. Do you remember fax machines? They'd fax everything through. And these were the days when you'd have to have special fax paper, thermal paper, right? So we had this, my dad, bless him, had an office equipment business, and he set up big old fax machine with thermal paper in the family kitchen. And then you'd hear once every 3 or 4 days, you'd hear a bunch of beeps and stuff. And this thing, it sounded like there was a lawnmower in the kitchen, and it would just spew out pages after pages after pages of scripts sent over by the guys at Hewland. And I've saved a lot of them, but because the thermal paper doesn't last, so most of the text has kind of faded away now. I got to find a way of preserving that stuff.
That's amazing. I love hearing stuff like that. Like that, just it makes me so happy because then, you know, it's not just you that's preserving it. You actually have physical items of the times, right? So, you know, like I have this jacket, you have those items and stuff. So, just having those things, I think, is just such a nice memory to carry on as well. Because as I said, you know, as you said, you know, having things like Twitch, you don't have those memories, right? I mean, you can create clips, but it just hasn't got that tangible thing that you can either hold or experience. You know, that's, as you said, it's that kind of thing that's missing at the moment.
Yeah, and it connects you, doesn't it? And like every time you put on that Eliminator jacket, it's tangible, right? You know,
the power.
The power of the jacket. Yes, there's not enough of that. Yeah, and I wish I stole more. You know, I wish I took like, I tell you what I tried to make out with. There's a lot of publicity shots of Big Boy Barry from the BTV days where I'm holding this big purple Swatch phone, right? Yes. And it's like a proper 90s, it's like huge. And I tried to nick that, but it was worth too much money in those days. It was like hundreds and hundreds of pounds, which back then was a lot of money. And I couldn't get away with a Swatch phone, but I wish I found a way to do it.
So we need to find you one of those. There you go, internet. There is a job for you. Let's find Alex one of those.
Big purple early 90s Swatch phone. Let's get on it.
So how many of the videos do you actually keep in contact with? I'm fascinated to know.
So Mr. Mather's Megabyte Millionaire is a good buddy of mine. He lives in Germany now, working for Nintendo. I don't get to see him as much as I would like, but still talk to him a fair amount, which is cool. Then you've got Rick Henderson, is probably the person I speak to most, who's the Violet Blade. So, you know, Rick is a very good friend. Rick was also a producer on the show, commentator, writer of a lot of the BTV episodes as well. And he did regularly appear on GamesMaster as well. So he's a multi-talented guy. And he's now an editor over at Pocket Lint, which is a very big tech website. I still speak to him all the time, but it's interesting that now that relationship has very much changed because I'll be doing PR for a company and having him feature some of the wares that I'm hawking out. So, but he's a great guy. So I still speak to Rick a lot. How many of the other guys? Doug Johns, who played the Gaming Messiah in seasons 1 and 2, if you remember him, the Jesus guy. And so he moved to Oz, and he's also in PR. So I speak to him. So he runs an agency over in Oz. So I still speak to him a fair amount. I speak to Charlene from My Living Love in Liverpool. I speak to Charlene a lot. She's not technically a videator, but we keep in touch on LinkedIn and Facebook and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, as I say, a few different characters, writers that come and go, producers that come and go, still speak to various different folks. So, as for the other videators, lost contact with a lot of them, but I know they're out there.
They're out there waiting to pounce on me.
Shannon is another one. Kat Shannon, who played, what was the character that she played? So Kat is fantastic, and she played one of the videators in the new seasons of shows when it came back in the morning with Andy Collins presenting it in the Aztec. And, she's a legend in PR, so she has a high-up position at one of the major publishers. I don't think it's fair to say which one, but you definitely know them. So I speak to Kat all the time. She's absolutely lovely. Yeah.
I would love, and I don't know about your opinion, but I would love to do some sort of Games World reunion. Like, that would be a dream come true, I think. So just pull everyone down for a day and just meet up or something.
I'm so down for it. And I think one of the replay events, I think, they've spoken about the possibility of it before. And I just did an interview for a book that's being written around the GamesMaster GamesWorld days. And they got in touch with the lovely Letty Edwards, who was the Grandma Videator on season 1. And they spoke to her after speaking to me, and she was very happy. How is Alex? Say hello to Alex. Tristan Moriarty, who played Master Moriarty, is still out there. So he was a friend of David Walliams, who played Leslie, my sidekick. And so that's how he came into be to the show as well. So, yeah, listen, I'm down for it, Dean. What can I tell you? Just finding us all, getting us all together.
I need to round up the troops. That's obviously something I'm going to have to do. I'm just going to quickly...
documentary film.
That would be cool. That would be
getting out to round everybody back up again for a special show.
That would be a brilliant idea, actually.
The mission. Wow.
Someone's actually asked me, because I'm going to rattle through this because I know we're time sensitive, but someone's actually asked me, which is the first time actually ever on the podcast, a question, and it says one for you both actually. Oh, sorry, it is for both of us. Seeing how you two have been rivals for so long, are you happy with how well each other is doing? As in, are you happy for your rival to be living up to doing what they need to be doing?
You're not a rival, Dean.
I know, we're best friends now. So.
Your story is fascinating. It really is, and it was such a special time for you to be on Gamesworld. Getting beaten by me was something that you've carried with you for many years, and you managed to beat your demons last year. But without sounding like a massive arsehole, I'm really sorry to say this, but I don't think about it that much. Right? You're not my rival. You're just a really nice guy who I played on the show, who's now awesome and keeps in touch with me. But I've never considered it a rival. For me, it was a job, right? I mean, my focus back on the day. It's interesting because I got the role of being Big Boy Barry because I was good at games. And then I was on Gamesmaster, and I was good at Gamesmaster. I was good on Gamesmaster. I got my golden joystick. That's why they called me back. I was on Gamesworld because I was good at games. But then during season 1, that kind of changed, and then there was the talk of the spin-off sitcom, the BTV and the Barry's Joypad, and that to me was much more interesting, right? The sitcom stuff, the acting stuff, the comedy stuff, whereas me and David Walliams and and that was kind of my focus. The Beat the Elite I can never give as much focus to as I did in season 1, and that's why I dropped quite a few games in season 2 and season 3 because I just wouldn't have time to practice or play. The other side of the production had come far more prominent for me. So I didn't think about it that much. I went on. It wasn't rigged. A lot of people think they were rigged. Only one episode a year of the show was, I don't want to use the word rigged, but I'll say calculated for television.
Adjusted for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, but everything else was like, hey, if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. I think... it was never a good idea for their more popular videators. They didn't want to see them lose like 6-7 weeks in a row because it creates a problem, right? It works better for them if they win, but they would never rig it. They would never rig it against any of the contestants because it's just not right. And we'd go in. It would be a day. If I'd lose, I'd be pissed off, but I'd get over it after a day or so because I'm back in the studio filming the sitcom side, right? So I never considered you a rival. I didn't consider any of the contestants really rivals. Some of the videators probably there was a friendly rivalry, but never again in any kind of mean or nasty way. But I never considered you a rival. I considered you a great contestant and gone on to be a great guy, very successful. Look how well you're doing. So of course, why would I in any way resent that? No, I don't. Represent anybody for success in life. I really don't.
No, absolutely. I think, first of all, thank you. That's nice to know, although it has stuck over my head for a few years. I
find that interesting, Dean. I'll be honest, I really do. I find that really, really interesting that it was a big part of your life. That was a really big part of your life. And losing that game was tough for you, and you've never let that go.
It's true.
A while, I had no idea.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those really weird feelings where I don't know why it affected me so much. I guess the problem is I've forgotten the guy's name. Is it Tim Boone? Is that right?
Tim Boone.
Yes. So every time I used to go over to the desk, he was bigging me up so much. He was like, you're massacring people. Like, we've never seen anyone do this, like, kind of damage. Because the thing is, back then, I wasn't very confident. I was very quiet. You know, I was like this silent assassin who would just come out of nowhere and just murder people. And people were like, whoa, what the hell's going on here? Because, like, I was a 9-year-old compared to most of the contestants who were far older, right?
Very young.
And
think about it. It's a very, very young age, right? And that makes great TV, but it's it's an emotional strain, and there wasn't enough appreciation given to that, I think.
And I remember he was just like, you're walking through people like you're that good, and I think at that stage when you're told that, you naturally overhype yourself, and that's why I kind of come back to when we played our game, which is. It was kind of like whoa, hang on a minute, this has actually happened. I've taken a loss. And the thing is that I'm one of those people where the moment something goes wrong, I fight twice as hard to try and rectify it, And I think that's probably why I said it. It kind of carried on into this cycle of, right, you can't do this. No, I can do this. I'm going to proceed and go ahead and do it. And I've always had that mentality. And it kind of stemmed from there, which sounds really weird, but it honestly did. And, as I said...
It's always interested me. And even back in the day, kind of sparked the memory there, much like breaking a dream. But even back in the day, again, so there was no internet, right? So there was no chat forums. There was no way of really instantly getting a snapshot of how the audience was receiving this programming, which, of course, today you get instantly. If you're streaming live, you've got instant feedback from people. You didn't have that. You'd have fan letters or hate mail, which was often hidden, both good or bad, from you because it was written and pushed into Hunan International. But I remember sort of midway through the first season when it was obvious that the show was a success. If I'd be out and about with my buddies in North London, people would start looking at you and pointing at you. Oh, it's Big Boy Barry. So you enjoyed your 5 minutes of fame back then. And I would get all the time, mostly it was really nice. And mostly it was people asking, for autographs or whatever it might be. But, you'd always get on every day, Big Boy Barry, I could beat you at Street Fighter. Don't play me at FIFA. I'll beat you at that. I'm the best at FIFA. The stock answer was like, yeah, come on the show. We'll figure it out from there. But really, in the back of my mind, like, I don't care. Maybe maybe you can. I don't know you. Go on. I'm just trying to buy a burger. So whatever it might be.
Do you know what? I can sympathise with that because I remember when I came back. Because I was still at school at the time, and I had to take days off school and go and see my headmaster and get him to sign that off, and my dad had to take days off work. And I remember when I came back and I, finally had the jacket, and we actually watched the videos because my parents had actually recorded it off the TV and stuff like that. And we sat there. The moment it finished, it was exactly the same. It was like everyone turned around and went, "I could beat you at NBA Jam. You're rubbish." I'm like, "Did you just see me just wipe the floor with everyone at NBA Jam? Are you really wanting to do this?" But yeah,
I do much better than that.
And I distinctly remember that, and I was like, "Shit, this is all gone a bit Pete Tong. This is not the way it was meant to be planned out." Suddenly I've gone from "Hey, you're cool" to "I'm going to beat you," and I'm like, "Hang on a minute. This is not what I agreed to. This is not how I planned out."
When people say that, they have the perception that you truly believe that you're unbeatable and that you'll drop everything to set up a console and play somebody just because they reckon they can beat you. So hang
on, let me just pull this SNES out of my back and this CRT TV. Hang on, there you go. Yeah,
go figure.
Well, I know I'm going to give you back your time now because I know you've got some things to do, but we must do this again soon. Hopefully.
Got a busy big boy schedule.
Exactly. So at some point in the near future, we must do this again in person because it's been...
We'll do it. We'll do it. And if you've got some more questions, let's compile that and then we can get up and we'll do a follow-up podcast. It'd be lovely.
That sounds like a wonderful idea. But honestly, thank you so much for giving me your time. It's still... even till this day, incredibly surreal. My mum says hi, by the way.
Hi.
She did decide to say hi, as do the rest of my family. And you have pretty much cemented...
So did your mum hate me after the first, after the initial episode?
Absolutely
then, right?
Not. The quite contrary. And
I came in and apologised, for making you cry.
No, I think Bob Mills was more of the hate point for some of the things that he had said in the background, but I forgive him for that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But no, quite the contrary. And what I was actually going to say was, you've actually become a name in my household that means a lot. which sounds crazy because, as I said, you had such a profound influence on me, and I think because you had always been that thing that loomed over my head, you made me work harder. So thanks to you, I've managed to actually achieve things. So.
All these years I had no idea. So, well, I'm happy, my friend. I'm happy to have helped. Good. And you've got a lovely family as well.
Well, I certainly hope that, we don't have to wait any longer before we can take another photo together. Because I cherish this so much. And as we said before, we kind of started...
Well, you can put me in a frame if you cherish it. Come on.
Well, here's the idea. I was going to take a picture where you're kneeling towards me because I was so small, and then put this jacket in a frame and put it on the wall. That was the idea. So, so there we've actually got the history. So, yeah, well, we'll get it done because it needs to happen. But honestly, Alex, thank you so much for your time. I think I speak for most of the gaming community when I say your impact and the amount of hard work that you have done for the variety of different things that you've got to give to gaming is profound, and the legacy that you've left and will carry on to do will just keep escalating to a higher level, because as soon as people say your name, it just makes people's eyes light up. In fact, I'm going to tell you a quick story before we go. When this happened, because
my ego, I'll hang on.
So when it will make you laugh, believe me. So the original person who was meant to do the kind of talk at Play Expo had cancelled, and you kind of tagged in, right? And I remember we were like, oh, we've got to try and get someone on. I could hear something going on, and I was at a all-you-can-eat buffet, sat with two friends.
Ian Lee.
That was correct. It was Ian Lee, yeah, and he couldn't make
Ian
it.
Lee. He's a really good guy, and he had a legitimate reason. I can't remember what it was, but he had a really legitimate reason, snowing or something, and the whole trains had been cancelled. He just literally couldn't get there. It was
So I remember sitting at a all-you-can-eat buffet, and I know a few people who are watching this are probably laughing in hysterics now, because I remember someone in the background went, oh, we've got a replacement, it's Big Boy Barry. And I opened Twitter, and all I saw was your face. And the guy who was sitting opposite me, my mate, said, what's wrong with you? And apparently my demeanour just completely changed. Because I was just like, and they went, oh, Big Boy Barry's coming. I just went... And they were like, are you all right? And I didn't say anything for about 10 seconds. And they were like, are you all right? Are you choking or something? And I just went, Big Boy Barry's coming. Big Boy Barry's coming. And for the whole evening, I was just walking around in a trance going, hang on a minute. I've got an idea, lads. I think we know what to do. So we spent the entire day going around the stalls to look for that copy of that tennis game. And I was walking around the entire day going, I need this. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that day was hilarious because the entire day everyone was teasing me going, I've never seen someone go from 0 to 100 on the name of a person that quick. I just completely changed. They were like, what the hell's going on with it? And it was funny because everyone on the table just went quiet, and it was like, what's going on?
It's fate, my friend. It's fate.
Exactly, it was fate. But honestly, meeting you that day,
I love stories like that. I love stories like that. And actually, some of the best stuff that I got to do is where you do meet or talk to people where the show means a lot to them, and. Huge ego. Of course, I've got a huge ego. You've got to be when you're in television. But
Agreed.
Genuinely, I got floored whenever I hear stories like that about what it means to somebody. Actually, one of my I'll tell you a tiny little story before I go. And I don't think I've ever shared this story before. But I remember one week we were editing the show, and they would edit the show at the Sky Studios in Austerley, which was next door to where they filmed it in season 1. And they needed me to come in and do some voiceover work because one of the mics wasn't picking up my dialogue properly. So I had to go in, and I remember they were cutting the show together. I was in the edit suite. They were working away. And the producer was there and was talking to me about some of the mail that had come in, some fan mail and stuff. And there was a letter that came in from the mother of a 9-year-old who was very poorly in hospital. And she was writing and saying, he only loves 2 things in this world. One is Big Boy Barry and gamesworld. The other is Power Rangers. If there's ever anything, if you could do a signed photograph or something, really make his day. And they left the full name and phone number on there as well. And I said, come on, let's just phone him. So, we picked up the phone in the edit suite. We stopped everything. And we actually got him because he was at home recuperating, and his mum answered, and I explained who I was, and we put him on, and I went into full character, and I was asking about the show, and I was saying that Leslie, sends his love, and I was asking him what games he was playing, and he was just, beside himself with excitement, right? And that was one of the finest things I've ever been able to do as Big Boy Barry. That is a memory for me. That means a lot more to me than some of the other stuff out there. It was great, and when you do have a chance to make somebody's day or change somebody's perception, or in your case, set somebody on a career path, even. It's truly rewarding, right? Because that's a legacy, and that's something that you can do, and that's a tiny little way of making a difference, right?
Totally agree. I mean, that's such a lovely story to hear, because I guess that's the other side of, I guess, being a personality in TV that you don't normally see, right? Because obviously, you see the big persona and stuff, but the fact that you went out of your way to do that, I mean, that's just you can't put money on something like that, to step up and do that is.
If you can help somebody or put a smile on their face, and that's why, to this day, whenever I see or hear of celebrities that, won't do a selfie or won't do an autograph, you just think, come on, man. It's not worth it. I mean, I don't support hounding people.
Yeah,
if somebody's sitting down trying to have a quiet meal or whatever, then leave them be. But back in the day, we'd have a lot of celebrities on the show, or be around celebrities for features and stuff. And I ain't going to name names, but when people would go up to them and ask them for a photo or for an autograph, and they just won't do it, you just think, how sad is that? Because you've just destroyed somebody's day, and it would be the easiest thing in the world to make them smile. So totally. That's what it's about.
Totally agree. Right, I will let you get on, but honestly, Alex, thank you so much. It's been amazing, is all I can say.
It's a tea time telly. Your round sound lovable mound. Your gaming guru. Your broad buccaneer of broadcasting. Your porky prince of primetime perfection. Your red hot tip top non-stop one-stop shop roller coaster ride of fun. Your mad mountain. Big Boy Barry. Thank you very much for your time as well, Dean.
I need that as a notification on my phone. People go, what the hell's that? But anyway, stay on the line, Alex. But from me, Big Machine Dean, if you do want to learn anything about Alex and look at any of the other random videos that we've mentioned, there will be links in the description below on this on-demand video. Or if you will leave listening to this via any podcasting platform, because it is on pretty much everyone going, there will also be links in the description. But from me, Big Machine Dean, thank you so much, Alex. Have a great weekend, and I will speak to you.
Thanks, buddy. Take care, guys.
Take it easy.